Hello, join us as Foreign Minister of Russia, Sergey Lavrov, is offering statements during a press conference. Let's listen.
Every state, especially every leader, has its own style of dealing in the international arena and domestically as well. Indeed, we appreciate that the United States are aware of one most important thing, that in principle, it is not correct when states are refusing to even talk to each other, the way it was done by the Europeans and Biden during his administration. Especially in the times when so many events on historical scale are taking place, not to talk to each other is simply criminal. Therefore, we appreciate that the Trump administration, from the very beginning, they've proposed to bring back our dialogue. We have rekindled it, and we have enshrined it back in February at the meeting with Marco Rubio, and later during a telephone conversation between President Putin and President Trump, that we acknowledge that Russia and the US and every other country have their own national interests. And the promotion of such national interests is a right of every state. When we've met with Marco Rubio, we have repeated this philosophy. We have recommitted to it, and in cases when our interests coincide, and there are not many cases in relations between Russia and the US. However, when such interests do coincide, it would be stupid not to use this in order to implement some mutually beneficial projects, be that in space or economy or any other sphere. The majority of cases when US and Russian interests do not coincide, the most important thing is not to let it result in confrontation or collision, especially a hot confrontation, and we're united in this position. In diplomacy, as you know, primarily in public diplomacy, a lot of things can be spoken out loud, considering the specifics of the moment. And there are plenty of moments, and sometimes the circumstances change, so we don't see that the US is withdrawing from the policy of holding open, frank dialogue with the Russian Federation, as well as with China and a number of other countries, that the United States are having differences of opinion and contradictions and different vision of the way they should trade further and conduct economic deals. You see, that's diplomacy per se, when colliding interests have to be reconciled and put in order in such a way that confrontations could be avoided. Some of our European colleagues have turned diplomacy either into kissing up to their friends from Washington, so that friends from Washington would continue to play in Biden's war, or they're turning, substituting diplomacy with sanctions. This is a path without any promise. It won't succeed. However, a frank dialogue on any matters, well, we see that the US is prepared for that, and we're also prepared to conduct it. As for diplomatic comments, they could be very different.
Thank you, Minister Lavrov. Betül Yürük with CNBC Turkey. President Trump publicly asked Turkish President Erdogan to stop buying Russian oil and gas at the White House. Do you expect Turkey to stop, or are you confident that Ankara will remain in it? And secondly, if Turkey were to return S-400 missile defense systems it purchased from Russia to rejoin the F-35 program, would Russia accept that? When I asked you a similar question last year, you told me that Turkey was the final user and cannot sell it to a third country. What do you have to say this time?
Значит, вы знаете. So you know the response to the second question, and to the first and to the second question, I don't want to guess here. However, I do wish to reaffirm something that I've always stated with respect to Turkey and any other of our partners. We respect the position of the Republic of Turkey, and in no way do we doubt the Republic of Turkey's respect for itself and respect for its people. Russia 24. Next month, Russia will be presiding over the Security Council. Please tell us what the work of the mission will be focused on. Every month on the agenda of the Security Council, automatically now, there are questions which arise, matters, which are the consequence, follow-up to resolutions previously adopted, and resolutions as a general rule presuppose a periodic overview of the implementation thereof. And the Secretariat, ahead of time, circulates a list of those topics which during any given month need to be listened, views need to be listened about, they need to be discussed, and additional instructions may need to be provided vis-a-vis implementation and enforcement of the relevant resolutions. And during the Russian presidency, what will be considered is the implementation of the Dayton Accords on Bosnia and Herzegovina. This is indeed timely because the situation there has reached a critical point. They have adopted a policy of collapsing the Dayton Accords, infringing upon the rights of Serbian people, and this is an egregious violation of the Dayton Agreements, which set out the equality of the three constituent peoples, the Serbs, Croats, and the Bosniaks. So this will be an interesting event. However, what is most important probably is that during our presidency coincides with an important anniversary, the 24th of October, which is the day of the founding of the United Nations, and on that day we plan to hold a special meeting, not, once again, not to extend support for those principles which were enshrined by the Founding Fathers in the Charter of the United Nations, but rather to take a look at today how these principles need to be upheld, especially given that the overwhelming majority of these principles explicitly, directly, pertain to the process of multipolarity. That includes the sovereign equality of states. This includes non-intervention in the domestic affairs of others. This includes the rights of nations to self-determination, the rights of peoples to determine their own fates. This is all enshrined in the Charter of the United Nations and has been the case for all of these 8 decades. But far from always has this been applied and implemented. So the 24th of October will be a meeting with a focus on analysis, and we hope with practical conclusions being drawn about further development of the United Nations.
Thank you, Mr. Minister. Abdul Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. Mr. Minister, your ambassador here gives very strong speeches in the Security Council about the genocidal war in Gaza. He's very factual, he's very straightforward. He gives a strong position of Russian Federation. However, can't Russia do more than just giving a strong statement and factual and right to the point? And the second, related to this question, ICC, the prosecutor, issued on May 20th, 2024, the arrest warrant for 2 Israeli war criminals. And from that day until today, the crimes are continuing, genocide is continuing, and yet not one single indictment of any other Israeli general or minister or war criminal. Thank you.
You know, I met with a number of my Arab friends over the recent week. Of course, we discussed Palestine, but we did not just discuss Palestine. We discussed the West Bank, the Jordan River. We discussed the south of Lebanon, the south of Syria, Lebanon, and many other issues. The situation is exceedingly volatile. There are many, not slowly ticking time bombs. There are mines that have been with many mines with fuses that have been detonated. But do you say that Russia What can Russia do beyond setting out our position in principle vis-a-vis Palestine during Security Council meetings? You represent an Arab media outlet. I am correct. Just recently, there was a summit, a League of Arab States summit and the Islamic Organization of Islamic Cooperation. During this summit, there was a discussion of the atrocities that are being perpetrated in the Gaza Strip. And there's an ongoing collective punishment targeting the Palestinian people. And in no way is this saying this is better than the terrorist attacks, which we all condemn, but collective punishment is also prohibited under international humanitarian law. So if following this summit, as an outcome of the summit, our Arab and Muslim friends have been engaged in efforts, and the result, the fruit of these efforts will have a practical significance in order to attempt to stop what has been taking place. Of course, we will join these efforts. You, the Arabs, are directly bordering Israel and Palestine. This has direct implications for you, first and foremost. You are our close friends, virtually all Arab countries, all Muslim countries, and of course, we want to help you. But when it comes to taking decisions about their actions, that is something that countries in the region have to do. Of course, I'm aware that Egypt and Saudi Arabia and Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, to one degree or another, are all participating in such trust-based confidential negotiations. The United States is lending a hand in this process. And there are many rumors here about certain agreements taking shape. Yesterday, I think President Trump mentioned that a solution is near. We are not yet aware exactly of what was being talked about. Of course, there's speculation about the 21-point plan. We read all of that. Something there looks like a collective governance or management. There's mention of a former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair, as a general governor of Gaza. Somewhere, I'm trying to find the right expression. Reservations. We're in America. Based on the rumors that have surfaced in the media sphere, somebody wishes to have this noble formula and to pin certain reservations. There are reservations here, or Buntustan, as was the case in South Africa during the apartheid era. I'm commenting here. I'm not signing on to anything, but I'm just mentioning the rumors that have been circulating. You're talking about Russia. There's a process underway. If the participating parties in the process, Arab countries and Palestinians, if they see some kind of a role, a possible contribution that the Russian Federation can make, of course, we will be told, and we would welcome that.
Sergey
Viktorovich, good afternoon. I represent TASS, and if possible, I wish to put two questions forward. Given the statements from various parties that were delivered, the statements made by various countries, including here in General Assembly, can Vladimir Zelensky count on returning to the borders of 2014? What is the situation on the ground in DPR right now, specifically in the so-called strategic triangle? Well, as regards to the 2022 borders, I don't think anybody is really counting on that, because counting on restoration of those borders would be politically blind and would demonstrate an utter lack of understanding about what is taking place. Russia is upholding our legitimate interests, the legitimate interests of the people whom the Nazis in Kiev, after the seizure of power through the coup, people they labeled terrorists, specimens, non-humans, whose children, through the words of Poroshenko, they threatened to put into the basements while the children of Ukrainian elite eat candy, travel in nice cars, and go to nice schools. I would like to state that there's all this talk about restoration of borders of a certain year, and these discussions have been ongoing for a number of years. And these discussions all have a common link. Ukrainian leaders who seized power after February 2014 illegally, consistently lied, and derailed all of the agreements that had been arrived at. If in February 2014, had there been implementation of the agreement that was signed between the president and opposition, this which was guaranteed by Germany, France, and Poland, had this been honored and fulfilled, Ukraine would have been within its 1991 borders. Then there would have been no events, there would have been no uprising in Crimea of those who refused to recognize the illegitimate authorities, because illegitimate authorities would not have come about. The war would not have started when those who did not recognize the illegitimate authorities were bombed by the Kiev regime. They were burned alive in their homes, as was the case in Odessa in the trade building when 50 people were burned alive. The planes were bombing Lugansk. Artillery was targeting all the territories, and this is categorically prohibited. The use of an army in a domestic conflict, of course, constitutes a violation of IHL, and then there were the Minsk agreements. If the Minsk agreements, which guaranteed that Germany and France, yet again, this was sanctioned by the Security Council, approved by the Security Council. Had they been implemented by the upper crust of the Kiev regime, then Ukraine would have been within the 1991 borders, minus Crimea, because there was a referendum held in Crimea. Nobody is disputing that. In 2014, I spoke with John Kerry. This is no secret now. He said that there's a need to forget about Crimea. Let's talk about Donbass. This was undermined, derailed, and Ukraine became even a little bit smaller. And had the agreements been implemented that Ukraine itself proposed in April of 2022, which we agreed to, then Ukraine would have also been within the 1991 borders, minus Crimea, and now minus in a larger part of Donbass. But Ukraine torpedoed that too, refusing to implement its own initiative. So there's no discussion of the 2022 borders. So we're talking about the borders which are enshrined in the Constitution of the Russian Federation. What was the second? The second question was having to do with the situation in DPR, specifically the strategic triangle, as it is called. How would you describe that? I will not comment on the situation on the battlefield. First of all, we have been here for a number of days already. But second, this is what the Ministry of Defense has been doing on a regular basis. Military correspondents provide reports about developments, so I'll leave it to them.
Thank you very much, Foreign Minister. Mark Stone from Sky News. I wonder if I could persuade you to answer a question in English, perhaps. President Trump has called Russia a paper tiger. Has said that European countries should shoot down Russian planes if they violate European airspace.
We were live to New York City as we keep covering all the updates from the United Nations General Assembly, and we were just witnessing the press conference that has been given by Russian Foreign Minister Sergey Lavrov on the sidelines of these debates, in which he referred to several topics such as the Palestinian cause, US-Russia relationships, also Russia's national interest and the right of the nation to defend those interests. The high official also condemned the unilateral sanctions imposed on Russia that, as he said, will not succeed. This is all for the moment, but stay tuned with teleSUR English because we are going to keep updating on all the information that come from the United Nations General Assembly.